So let's talk about the items that you'll need to make your Hexie clock. The part that takes the longest is actually making your large Hexie flower. So for this particular flower, this takes 37 hexies. These are 1-inch hexies, and there's 37 of them. And it took me 5 days to stitch all these together by hand. I actually pre-cut all of my 1-inch hexies, and then I also pre-cut my leave-in stabilizer. I use leave-in stabilizer that I cut with my AccuQuilt because I don't love taking out papers. So if you have the AccuQuilt system, you have any of the Go Me's, the Go Big, and the 1-inch Hexie die, you can make these. And I'll link below the video that I have on how to do that. Otherwise, you'll be using papers for 1-inch hexies, and you'll pull all of those out when you're completely finished stitching all this together. You actually can pull some of them out as you go. So I'm assuming you're probably familiar with EPP. If not, I do have 3 beginner tutorials that you can look at on my YouTube channel on how to actually do EPP hexies. So take a look at that. Once you stitched all 37 of these hexies together, then what you're going to do is you're going to give it a really, really good press. So I used starch and I pressed the back and I also pressed the front. That really is the hardest part to this project. Or I shouldn't say hard, it's just a little more time consuming. I didn't put a deadline on it really. I just kind of did it for fun and relaxed while I was visiting with my father, and we were sitting in the kitchen or in the living room and just enjoyed myself. So make it leisurely, make it fun. The other thing that you will need is you will need a piece of wood with a hole in the middle. So I got this one on Amazon, and I'll link it for you below. And I got this size because it works with my 37 hexies so that the wood does not show when I get this centered on here. So that's why I picked that one. So you'll need that. Again, Amazon, I'll link it below, or you can cut your own. You also need fabric tack. Now this is permanent fabric tack because we're going to be gluing the back to be able to adhere it to our piece of wood. You'll need a pair of really sharp scissors because we're going to be cutting a hole in the middle of our center hexie, enough to be able to get the battery mechanism through the center of that. You'll also want maybe a fabric marking pen so that you can find the center and mark that before you cut that. The other thing that you're going to need is the clock movement mechanism. Now, there are several different sizes of these. I got this one on Amazon. When I made my Dresden clock, I actually purchased a different one of these. And what's important is the size of your wood will make a difference on which one of these to purchase. So if you order the same piece of wood that I've linked below for the hexies, this particular one will fit. If you choose to do a thinner piece of wood, then you're just going to want to pay attention to the depth of the hole in the wood and what the measurement is on this. So what I'll link for you is this actual one that I'm using for this size piece of wood, because I know that this will come all the way through the top of the wood to put the mechanism on there. So now we're ready for the next step. So you're going to take your Hexie flower and you're going to feel for the hole behind your center hexie. And if you fussy cut like I have, just keep in mind, whatever you fussy cut, you will be poking a hole through there. So I kind of chose an area where his little belly is, and I just want to make sure none of my wood is showing and it's centered. And then you're going to use, I can feel the hole there, a pair of scissors, really sharp. These are Fiskars, and they're extremely sharp. And you're just going to poke a hole in there. And I sometimes will use, this came with my polyfill bag, a little stick, just to make sure it's good and round. Okay, then we can move the wood out of the way. And now we're going to take our fabric tack. And sometimes my fabric tack bottle takes a little bit for all of the glue to really get down here to the bottom. But what you're going to do is you're going to take your glue and you are going to liberally glue all of your hexies. So I suggest doing all the way around the edges and in the middle to make sure that this is really glued well when we attach it here to our piece of wood. So let's go ahead. This is going to take me a minute or two, but let's go ahead and use the fabric tack and glue down our hexie. Okay, now that we've got all of the glue on this, and you kind of have to go a little fast because the glue will dry, I just stick my stick in there and be able to try to line it up. And you got like a few seconds here to maneuver it. Make sure none of the wood is showing. Okay. And then I am just going to press that down really well. And it'll take just a few minutes for it to dry. And then once this is dried, we will put the clock mechanism on. Okay, so let's look at our pieces here that we have for the clock mechanism. There were little pieces of plastic that were on top of these right here. I pulled those off, so these are nice and shiny. The other thing is I actually used some metal cutters, and I actually cut my little tips of my hour and my minute hand down shorter, because these were going to come out a lot longer than I wanted them to. This one was going to come out over the clock, so I just trimmed mine down. This was the only set that I could find in which this piece was long enough to fit through this particular hole. As I mentioned, you may want to use a different size piece of wood, but what I've posted and shared here are what will work with the size that I'm using, and wanted to make sure this was thick enough to go through that. So I've got all my pieces here to set those to the side. And if you'll notice here, this is a mechanism that you'll be able, once it's all put together, you can hang this on the wall. Okay, so the directions here tell us to go ahead and put the rubber shaft right there. So it'll go like this. And then we'll go ahead and place it back on top. Where that pops through there. And step 4 looks like it is this gold washer here. So we'll put that on. It kind of fits down in there. It kind of snaps on. And what's really nice is you can see it pushes kind of that fabric down, if you can see it from that angle. So that will go right there. Make sure everything's lined up. Then we put on our washer. This is a thicker washer. That will screw down. There's some rivets there. Okay. We got that. The next step, it tells us, is to put our hand and then press lightly. So we'll snap that on there. And then the minute hand snaps on. And then we have this little teeny cap that fits right down inside the hole there. And it just snaps down in there. Okay. And there you go. We'll zoom back out so you can see. There we go. So I am going to grab some batteries. This actually looks like it takes a AA battery. And so I'll put that in there and we'll get it to working. It is 4:48. So if this is about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, this is going to be 5. So there we go. And if you look really, really closely, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but you can see the second hand just slowly moving every second. There you go. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on how to make your own Hexie clock and have a little accent for your studio or for your house, or give it as a gift or something. And you can do this with different things. So the other clock I made using almost the same process is a Dresden clock. So let me show you what that looks like. So here is my Dresden clock that I made, and I actually made this one first. And what's super fun about it is, if you can see in the middle, I ordered these fun little patches that are all quilty related. They say different things. This one says life is short, stitch fast. And I used white for my mechanism on this one. You can see here, I had quite a bit of room whenever I pushed that through. So this one sticks out a little bit further. With this one, I ordered a much larger circle piece of wood with a hole in the middle. And on this one, what you'll need is you'll need to use your staple gun. So I had a piece of fabric that I cut into a circle, and I actually stitched my Dresden onto that piece of fabric. So my stitching is in the ditch between each one of these, and I stitched it to this kind of peach color piece of fabric. And then I used a dab or two of glue really to kind of glue that to the wood. And then I took my staple gun that I showed you in the very beginning, and I used my staple gun to actually tack that down really well. And then I just used like a hook here, and I actually just used a staple gun to put that in there, but you could use whatever you want. So you would do the same thing with using Dresdens if you would like to make a Dresden clock. This one hangs in my studio. I'm kind of thinking of swapping this one out, maybe putting this one, I don't know, or it may be in our Airbnb. But either way, now you know how to make a Hexie clock or even a Dresden clock. And I'll make sure to link all the information in the show notes below so that you can make your very own. I'm Belle from Seam Sew Me. If you like this tutorial, please give it a like and subscribe so you can be alerted to more tutorials and items that I may make, so you can make yours as well. Until next time, quilty friends, make lovely things.